In search of a couch co-op game, I stumbled across Little Nightmares 3. Turns out it's not a couch co-op game, but it should have online multiplayer feature, which is not what I wanted. But I had the weirdest discussion about this game with a friend of mine because what I had gotten from the game's story is too drastically different from them. It's as if we watched two different movies. Honestly though, my reference was limited to the first Little Nightmares that I had played a long time ago, and practically the only thing I vaguely recall about it is some of the imagery in it. The only thing I unequivocally know is I liked the game, so I thought why not continue the series and play Little Nightmares 2 and see what its story is all about. I gotta say, going into Little Nightmares 2, I had no particular expectation for it aside from it not being a terrible game. So I was a little taken back because I didn't expect it to be this good. However, as they say, there's no such thing as a perfect game, or is there? Well, I guess we'll see in this video. I'll try to break down the game without opening my closed wounds, that is. By the way, hi, welcome to my channel. Please like the video, subscribe, share, and all that. You know, I don't know how much details I can omit before this review becomes too incomprehensibly vague, because I really don't want to spoil this game. I tend to go into games with as little info as possible. That's why I structure my videos this way, but let me know if this makes for not that helpful short review. Okay, let's talk about Little Nightmares 2. I want to start off by saying I have a great deal of appreciation and admiration for games, or any media for that matter, that tells their story strictly through visuals. I don't know what happened with the first Little Nightmares, if I had selective amnesia or I was playing mindlessly, but here I was super alert and kinda mesmerized by Little Nightmares 2. The unsettling finds you see in the game's environment, the tense atmosphere hidden by the sounds you hear, pushes you to be cognizant of your surroundings and to look around more. The game rewards you for doing so, as it doesn't bamboozle you with sudden traps, so long as you're paying attention to the subtle clues manifested in what's placed there in a level. And because of its choice to forego dialogue, it invites you to be more observant of its small details, to make sense of what's happening. It feels like everything in the game's level are meticulously placed there to add to the story's narrative or atmosphere, so much so that this game might be the literal personification for games of the phrase show don't tell. Perhaps after saying that, it'd be redundant to say this, but the world building is fantastic. The story is weaved in via the details in the level and the game's events, as opposed to your typical tying everything up with cutscenes. The game lives up to its name, maybe. It doesn't really have a straightforward story. Like, for comparison, it's not like A Tale of Two Sons, where the game is silent and the story is steadily unveiled in a clear way. In Little Nightmares 2, what in its seemingly dystopian world implies disturbing things that possibly had and are occurring, but it feels like it's up for interpretation because the hows and the whys are purposefully left out, unless you can put all this bullshit together. I personally love the story beats. There were lots of emotionally invoking moments, ranging from shock to anger to concerned, if you know you know, to a funny dark humor moment, or at least there was one that I thought comes across as that. And to top it off, all those are earned because the pacing and the sequencing of gameplay sections are extraordinary. By the way, this is just how I feel about the story in general. I'll keep my unfiltered thought on how I truly feel for the end of the video because I'll discuss specific story spoilers. It should explain the thumbnail. Now let's get into the gameplay, starting with the one thing that I think is safe to discuss, the girl, since she's on the cover. To not give away too much, I'll just say the game superbly manages to get you to care about this character. I myself was ready to crash out behind her like half an hour in. She's that well written. How she works when it comes to her mechanics is most definitely not like a helpless NPC character, but more like a companion. This might be exposing the game's bones a bit, but she's immune as long as you're alive. And from a technical gameplay angle, you really don't have to look out for her safety, but you will need each other in some areas to get from point A to point B. So as a companion, what you would do is assist in reaching higher ledges and things of that sort. She would also do helpful things like, say, if you had to carry two things to a specific location, instead of having to go back and forth to grab the other item, she'd grab the other item and carry it alongside you. There are very few times where she'd provide, I guess, a hint. For example, when I went into a room, she immediately grabbed an object from there. It was unclear why she did that, but then outside of that room, an object like that was needed. However, this is not a game where you look around for 5 seconds and the game resorts to rushing you by bombarding you with hints. Instead, how it typically goes is she might do something, only one thing, right at the start that makes you think, or she doesn't. There's no in between. Despite that, the majority of the game's sections don't play like collaborative segments between the controlled main character and the girl, due to most of the tasks landing more on the main character. The main character will have to fetch out of reach things, put things together, and of course be at the forefront when it's time to traverse dangerous areas. But before I discuss those dangerous areas, I want to talk first about the core of the game, the puzzles. Normally in games that are puzzle heavy, I would stick to thinking within the confinement of what the game controls allows. But in this game, I found that in many times the solution is outside of what I thought I could do, and it would be a reasonable and a logical one, which I really appreciated because this way the puzzles don't get too formulaic or easy. But do note that the visually minimalistic approach the game utilizes includes its puzzles too, so whatever the required item for a puzzle is, it wouldn't be glistening or be outlined with bold colors. However, the game employs subtle guiding elements like with the placement of light, as well as bringing attention to a point of interest by framing it in a certain way within a camera's shot, and even by using the camera's movement. What I mean by that is, for example, the camera wouldn't zoom in and follow you to areas where there is nothing to find there. Although puzzles can take place at dangerous spots, they don't get as hectic and messy as dealing with adversaries in the game often does. Those are the dangerous areas I was referring to earlier. Because of those adversaries, the horror element kept getting intense. Although some of them have more of an aggressive approach than others, I found them all to be unnerving. Also, the lead up to them was great. Hearing their footsteps drawing near or hearing them shuffling with things in the background, hitting who knows what or who knows who. It's all a bit too much in a good way. And the music used in their sections doesn't help either. The small melodies would ramp up the closer they get or when they're around. I'm not sure if there is a boss soundtrack that I'd return to like there is with Haunting Ground's various bosses soundtracks, but the music accomplishes its goal. Ironically, what lessened the horror factor for me are the chase segments, specifically the overly scripted ones, or when the game tries to amp up the difficulty with the enemies, like with too many things going on at the same time. Because then I'd be too focused on trying to follow the path that I think the game wants me to run towards, that I wouldn't really be paying attention to anything else. I suppose in a way they're like the equivalent of a QuickTime event. They're just as scripted, and typically I'd be waiting on the next prompt to press rather than watch what's going on. So yeah, I'm conflicted on those chase scenes. I don't mind the regular non-linear ones, But those scripted ones, they need to be done in a specific way within a time restraint, which can result in a failing and repeating a stage over and over. And that's just not fun. That's all the main points I wanted to break down. If I had to point out negative things within the game, aside from what I said earlier, I would say I didn't like how there's only one autosave file. I didn't trust that the game would correct itself if I did something wrong, so I was a bit anxious playing the game because if something got messed up, just how much of my progress would I lose? Thankfully, I never encountered a glitch or a technical problem. Something I think people might not like is the game possibly being on the shorter side. I don't have an issue with that because I think puzzle platformers shouldn't be too long for the fact that it's easy for them to feel like they've dragged. Like a puzzle heavy game with the same gameplay duration of an action adventure open world game sounds like a nightmare, no pun intended. In conclusion, I don't think there is much to dislike here unless horror or platformers are not your cup of tea. But I'm curious to know how you feel about this game. If you didn't like it, I'd like to know why, because those might be my blind spots. And if you're a fan of the game or the franchise, I gotta ask, what do you like and dislike about it? Because I'm trying to see if I'm alone on the story ranting I'm about to get into. But thank you so much for watching, and again, please like the video if you haven't. Share the video, subscribe, and all that. I guess now at the end I'll reveal my bias. Games like Little Nightmares are extremely appealing to me, so I wasn't surprised that I loved it from the jump. It just fits my taste. Not necessarily the horror element, but everything else. And it helps greatly that the game itself is super polished. However, spoilers.
So disrespectful. That got me so hot. It got me so hot.
The freaking plot twist at the very end, it had me so mad. Then I was stressed, then back to being upset. I thought I got the bad ending. I don't know if I did or if I didn't. I avoid reading about the game if I'm making a video about them, but I seen a playthrough and they got the same ending. So if it's the true ending, like, okay, I hate it less, but I'll accept it. Maybe this is why I blocked out the first game, because I might have hated its ending too. I'm talking specifically past the fleshy sea of eyes following the main character and the girl. Prior to that, I liked everything, but after this, things just doesn't add up. I mean, there is an ambiguous ending, and then there is a jarring shift in their narrative that's contradictory, comes out of nowhere, and doesn't make any sense. Like, is this an ex-friend situation? What about the TV obsessed people? Was this like hinting at neglected child situation? What's up with the many the rest imagery? I hope they're not hiding behind the excuse of it being a dream so they wouldn't have to tie anything together. Because dreams are not random, even if they seem so, with everything being coupled up. But what's in there is pulled from the subconscious mind. But then again, if it was a dream, it doesn't work when it comes to what was established with the enemies in the game. This is not how I expected this pseudo Ico descendant to end like. I can't make sense of it, so I'll just leave it at that. Thank you again so much for watching. Sorry for the long rant, but thanks for listening to my thoughts. Until the next video, bye.